thought since the phone sat there anyway, somebody might be interested in watching this get set up. So here we go. If I wit it, I wit it. If I don't, I don't. These are T25 fasteners. Oh, wiggle in there. There's an addition for a Mirage band. A hook for a Mirage band. There we go. Let's start with it on that one. As always, I'm just easing that forwards as I'm nipping these into place. These Burris Signature XTR rings are quite cool because if you need to add elevation, you can do that within the ring itself, because after you take the top off, you'll see in a moment there are two liners that go on it that will hold the scope in position, so they protect the tube A, but they're also like spherically rose jointed, so you can have, you know, any application of elevation within the scope tube with different spaces of thicknesses of rings at either end, top, bottom, whichever you want, and there's no fear of damaging the scope's tube because of misalignment. So I'm torquing those up to 5 Newton meters. And now we go to the somewhat on-camera, time-consuming process of spinning all these lovely T15 torque screws out. I have to say, if you're going to put scope rings on, use T25 at the bottom, T15s at the top, because they just work, they suit the torques applicable, like 5 at the bottom, 2 on the top, 2 Newton meters rather, 5 at the bottom. And they don't slip, they don't spin, you don't break them, they don't turn like Allen keys. It's just a better way of doing things. And frankly, scope rings that use smaller fittings than those are a bit hopeless, because you just end up breaking them, like T7 torques and things like that. What's the point? I don't even like T10s. I'm not one for all this ring lapping fiasco, because I think that stems from decades where things were made to far worse production tolerances. It's also the simple fact that if you lap something, you're removing material from it. So what used to be a precision fit is no longer a precision fit. It's a little bit tricky to see the markings on these, but that should be -5 in the back at the top, and that should be a +5 at the bottom. I've certainly no worries about putting this together with 5 MOA on it. That does depend slightly on the ring spacing as well. If you put those close together, that becomes more than 5 MOA, and further apart becomes a bit less, but the instructions are all in with the rings. And as they come from the factory, I'll probably drop something showing you this, but yeah, it has a sticker on to say the 5 MOA inserts in it, which obviously needs to go in the back ring unless you've got something weird going on with your scope rail or rifle action. So let's pop the scope in. That's the front one. Now, because of the way these rings are, I've used them on quite a few occasions. I actually own a few sets of these. They're really handy, or they used to be really handy for things like Yukon photons that needed elevation putting in on the ring without any issues damaging the tube. But you'll actually note what I'll do is I'm going to set the scope up completely using just the centre pair of screws and the ring at the top. That's purely because, with it being like a rose jointed thing, you can actually get the internal line a little bit skew if. It doesn't matter anything other than visually, because it can't apply pressure in anything other than a sort of flat ratio, flat angular alignment to the scope tube, but you get the idea. So I'm going to do my usual thing now, having a fiddle with this, feels very short length of pull. Yep, we'll have a fiddle with this, move things around, see what's going to work straight. The plastic liners do grip the tube inherently quite well, so you have actually got to make sure these are particularly loosened to make sure you can just slide and jiggle things around a little bit. That's better. It's the first focal plane scope, this one. I'll do my usual trick, lining up the bottom reticle post, the 6 o'clock stadia with the convenient channel in the base of the receiver which fits the firing pin in it, or the sear on the firing pin. So that's aligned for me now. I shall swap to my torque wrench to just nip these in, and I will be very careful with these to go opposites because they grip the tube quite well, these plastic spacers, which is no detriment, it's just something you need to be aware of at setup. You want to make sure it's not twisting the tube as you tighten them down. I think that's pretty good. I might just give it a slight tap. I'm very, very particular when it comes to reticle setup, and I don't like, you know, because testing guns is time and money for me, I like to make sure things are set up before I take them to a shooting facility so that I'm not wasting time, diesel and ammo. Yep, happy with that. Now of course, because these are rose jointed and effectively the tube can go up or down, there's no point me nipping this back ring down fully until the front ring is also getting firmer and snug in place. Otherwise the tube might actually be slightly upward. I nip down the rear ring, you know, here, and then when I nip down the front ring it's going to go like that, which I don't want to do. I want to make sure it's down and flat both ends before I nip anything in place. So these are only currently tight enough just to stop it rotating at all. And that's why you've got to just look at it as a whole uniform system. And everything wants just doing little small steps so that it's all functionally restful and relaxed in position before you really start tightening anything down. So that scope is now in position. It will hold perfectly, to be quite honest, onto 4 screws, but when it comes to it I will spin these down. But I just don't see the point in tightening them down until I've got the tube actually aligned correctly in place, and also in, you know, in rotational and longitudinal position to make sure the reticle's straight and the eye relief's correct. And that's not to say that when I get the gun shooting I might make some odd changes to it, but I know that if the worst comes to the worst I could certainly live with it like it is. I've done so many of these, I just know, you know, what's correct ballpark before I even, you know, leave the workshop. They are quite high, these rings, so there's, you know, there's a good 15mm, nearly 20mm spacing between the scope's objective belt and the barrel. So you're certainly not going to have any contact issues. But I suspect I might be appreciating that slightly adjustable cheek piece, getting it lifted up a bit. I don't know if I'm just blocking your view here, but there's nothing really much to see. Nothing to see here, folks. So 2 centre ones are nipped, 2 centre ones are nipped, 2 Newton meters, 2 Newton meters. So now I'm just going to go back and I'm going to do the whole diagonal route on the outer rings, outer screws, all down to 2 newton meters. Keep going around until I see no movement at all, and then you'll probably find that when I do this one, it'll move slightly and click. Ready? Yeah, a good 1/16 of a turn there, and that one's a little bit more. Same at the front. Nip them. You'll see there's only my fingertips actually on this torque wrench. They really don't need to be treated with any brutality. Inherently good scope mounting systems really don't need that much additional strength to hold your scope in place. Again, you might have noticed on that centre pair, after I'd nipped the outer ones down, they'd actually gone loose because of the ring top being nipped down into position. So, I'm entirely happy with that now. Bolts in, everything's working. I'll be taking the moderator off, giving the rifle a full clean out. Good scrub down the barrel, have a look down the barrel with the bore scope, check it out. And I'll just check some dummy rounds feeding from the magazine before I take it anywhere. But that, plus a bipod, is ready to go shoot now. So yeah, that's the Tikka UPR. Have I got the name right on that one? Yeah, it is a 10 round magazine. So yeah, Tikka T3X UPR. It's got a free floating barrel. I wouldn't say it was super stiff, but there should be plenty there for shooting off a bipod. And it certainly beats the standard T3s, which do contact all the way back. If you want, in fact, I'll just use the Tikka sticker, which I can't stop saying there. So yeah, there's no pressure contact there. There isn't a huge amount of space, but there's certainly no pressure contact. Even with a slight nip on that, I've still got freedom of movement there. And it looks like it's only the very, very tip of the forend that's even got the ability to touch the barrel. And I'm actually squeezing that very hard together with my finger and thumb there. So yeah, that's going to be fine. I'm pretty sure that'll be fine to go out and shoot. Right, off we go. I shall report back. Au revoir.